They held a funeral for me. Gave speeches, cried in church, raised money in my name, and I was still alive. What kind of family replaces you with another girl, gives her your name and pretends you never existed? This is the story of how I came back from the dead, just to remind them I was never gone. If this hit you like it hit me, don't forget to subscribe. You're not alone. It's a strange thing, really, attending your own funeral. Even stranger when your mother is the one delivering the eulogy. I wasn't physically there, of course, but I watched it. All 27 minutes of it. The recording was grainy, probably taken by one of those well-meaning parishioners from the back pew of Grace Baptist Church in Shelby, Iowa. It opened with a soft piano version of Amazing Grace, and then there she was, my mother, Donna Hartman, standing tall behind the pulpit in a pale lavender dress, clutching her Bible like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She looked devastated. Convincing even. Maybe too convincing. "Rebecca lost her way," she said, voice trembling. "But we believe that God, in His mercy, took her home. She was broken, but now she's whole." I remember freezing in my kitchen, one hand hovering over a steaming mug of coffee, the other holding my phone, replaying her words again and again. I wasn't broken. And I sure as hell wasn't dead. It started with an email. A name I hadn't seen in decades. Melissa Trent, someone I vaguely remembered from high school youth group. The subject line was simple: "Are you alive?" I almost laughed. Almost. Then I opened it. "Hey, sorry if this is weird. I just came across something that, well, it made me think of you. Weren't you Donna Hartman's daughter? I thought you had passed away years ago, but then someone told me you moved to Oregon. Let me know if this is a mistake." Attached was the video. I didn't open it right away. But I knew. I knew before I clicked. Knew before I heard the organ swell or saw the flowers or the white projection screen behind my mother's head with a photo of me at 17, smiling awkwardly in my church choir robe. They used that picture. The one from Easter Sunday, the year before everything fell apart. I looked so innocent, so obedient, as if that version of me deserved mourning. Not the woman I became. It had been nearly 24 years since I last stood in that church. I left Shelby, Iowa on my 18th birthday. Not with a suitcase but with a trash bag. A literal black hefty bag filled with jeans, 2 blouses and a toothbrush. My mother had packed it for me. No goodbyes. No hugs. No tears. Just the sound of the door closing behind me and the porch light flicking off like a final sentence. I was pregnant. That was the original sin. My boyfriend, Daniel Alvarez, wasn't white, wasn't Baptist, and wasn't welcome. That night, my mother stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed and her face frozen in something between disappointment and disgust. "You've made your choice," she said. "Now you live with it." And I did. I built a life. Alone. In a town where no one whispered my name like a curse or followed me with the heavy weight of what could have been. I had a daughter, Ellie, who didn't know her grandparents, didn't even know they were alive. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. I never talked about them. Never needed to. Till now. They didn't just cut me off. They erased me. They buried me under hymns and half-truths and a church-funded slideshow. They told a town full of God-fearing families that I was gone. Not missing. Not estranged. Dead. And no one questioned it. Not the woman who once babysat me. Not my Sunday school teacher. Not even the neighbor who used to slip cookies through the fence. No one asked why there was no obituary in the paper. No coroner's report. No funeral notice. They just believed. Because people like my mother don't lie. Because women like Donna Hartman only grieve when it's true. That night, after watching the video 3 times, I sat on the edge of my bed while Ellie slept in the next room. I could still hear her soft breathing, the occasional creak of her bunk bed. I stared at the paused screen, my mother's face frozen mid-sentence, eyes glassy, mouth open in the middle of saying, "She's at peace now." I whispered to no one in particular. "You declared me dead. But you forgot to bury the part of me that remembers." And then I opened a folder I hadn't touched in 10 years. One labeled Hartman. Inside, hospital bills. A handwritten letter I never sent. My birth certificate. My daughter's too. I didn't know what I would do next. But I knew one thing. The next time they saw my face, it wouldn't be in a photograph. I used to think silence was peace. But in our house, silence was punishment. Growing up in the Hartman household meant your worth was measured in obedience, and love came dressed in conditions. If you followed the rules, you got a nod of approval. If you didn't, you got scripture thrown at your head. Figuratively, most days. My mother, Donna, wasn't the yelling type. No, she was the kind who could cut you clean in half with a stare and a single sentence laced in Bible verse. She taught Sunday school every week, ironed my father's shirts like it was part of her salvation, and never, ever, let the outside world see the cracks. She kept a rotation of casseroles in the freezer labeled with names of families she was praying for. We were never on that list. Then there was Abigail, my older sister. 2 years my senior, 5 lifetimes ahead in approval. She was everything I wasn't: poised, proper, modest to a fault. The kind of daughter who knew how to bow her head just right when she prayed, and who could recite psalms like a songbird. People in church used to say, "You girls are so lucky to have Donna as a mother." I'd smile politely. Abigail would beam. "Donna." She'd place a gentle hand on Abigail's shoulder and say, "The Lord has truly blessed me with this one." This one. I was the other. At 12, I got caught humming along to a pop song on the radio. The next day, my mother gathered every CD I owned, most of them borrowed from friends, and dumped them into a metal trash can behind the shed. She didn't just burn the CDs. She made me stand there and watch. "If music leads you to sin, better to cut it off than let it fester," she said, quoting Matthew. Then she handed me a notebook and told me to write 100 lines of Proverbs 31. I did. Crying quietly. That was the key in our home. You could cry just as long as it didn't make noise. By the time I was 15, I had mastered the art of invisibility. I didn't argue, I didn't ask questions, and I didn't dare speak during dinner unless prompted. My father, Reverend George Hartman, preferred quiet meals. He had the kind of presence that filled a room even when he wasn't speaking. He rarely looked at me, but when he did, it was always with a heavy kind of disappointment. Like I was a stain on the upholstery they couldn't quite scrub out. And when I did well, aced a test, won a regional essay contest, made it into the Honor Society, it was always expected. But when Abigail won a second-place ribbon in a county fair baking contest, they framed it, put it on the living room wall. There were moments, brief and blurry, when I thought maybe, just maybe, I could earn their love. Once, I stayed after church to help clean the pews with the deacons. I spent 2 hours scrubbing hymn book holders until my fingers went numb. That night, I overheard my mother on the phone with the pastor's wife. Abigail stayed behind to serve as usual. Such a giving spirit. I stood in the hallway, mouth dry. Abigail had gone home right after the sermon. I had done the work. But she got the praise. That's how it was. Truth didn't matter. Perception did. And no one perceived me the way I wanted to be seen. Then came Daniel. He was 17, worked at a garage outside town, and had the kind of laugh that made my ribs feel like they could breathe again. He saw me. Not the other Hartman girl. Not Donna's disappointment. Just me. I remember one night we sat on the hood of his car watching stars spill across the sky. He asked what I wanted from life. No one had ever asked me that before. I told him I didn't know. Maybe to be loved without a contract. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and said, "Yeah, that makes sense." When I found out I was pregnant, I thought I'd be scared. But mostly I felt calm. It was like for the first time I had someone, that was mine. Not a project for the church. Not a reflection of Donna's perfection. Just mine. I didn't get to tell them in my own way. My mother found the test in the trash. I came home from school to find her standing at the kitchen table, holding it like a snake. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just said, "You've cursed this house." That night my father called a family meeting. He sat at the head of the table, hands folded, Bible open. Abigail sat stiffly to my left, avoiding eye contact. Donna stood behind him like a sentinel. "You have brought shame to our family," he said. "You've made your choice. And now we're making ours." That was the last night I ever ate at that table. The next morning I found the black trash bag waiting for me by the front door. Inside, my clothes, my toothbrush, and a copy of The Power of a Praying Woman. There was no note. Just silence. And the porch light turning off as I walked away. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just kept walking. Because even then I knew. They didn't kick me out of the house that day. They erased me from the family. And the funeral they held 23 years later? That was just them finally making it official. For the first few years after I left, I told myself I didn't care. That I didn't miss them. That the silence from Shelby was a relief, not a wound. But there's a lie we tell ourselves when we've been cast out. That absence means freedom. The truth is, absence only means silence, and silence is its own kind of prison. The first winter I spent alone in a studio apartment above a laundromat in Des Moines, I remember sitting on the floor with a hand-me-down space heater rattling beside me, eating canned soup with a plastic fork. I was 6 months pregnant, barely sleeping and working double shifts at a diner where the cook kept calling me kiddo, like it made up for the grease burns on my arms. Christmas came and went with no card. No call. No word. It was the not knowing that chipped away at me. Were they angry? Ashamed? Grieving? Did they sit around the same table without me, pretending I had never existed? Or worse, did they thank God I was gone? When Ellie was born in early March, I held her in my arms and whispered promises I had no idea how to keep. She was red-faced, wrinkled, squalling like the world owed her something. Maybe it did. I didn't have a nursery or baby books or a support system. I had one bottle, one blanket, and one fragile belief that I could do this without them. Still, that summer I wrote to them. A real letter. Ink on paper. I sat on the bed while Ellie napped and I poured everything I had into that page. I told them I had a daughter. Her name was Ellie Rose. That she was beautiful and strong and that she had my stubbornness and, though it turned my stomach to admit it, my mother's eyes. I wrote that I missed them. That I wasn't looking for permission to come home, just a chance to be seen again. To be remembered. I mailed it to the house on Maple Street, same address I'd written on Christmas cards as a child. I waited. Weeks passed. Then a month. I checked the mail every day like some pathetic dog expecting scraps. Nothing came. Until it did. A single envelope. No return address. No handwriting I recognized. Inside, one sheet of paper. Typed. 5 words. My daughter is already dead. That was it. No salutation. No signature. No warmth. I held that paper in my lap for almost an hour, just staring at the finality of it. It wasn't a door slamming shut. It was a gravestone. Not only was I not welcome, I no longer existed. It should have broken me. And maybe for a while it did. I stopped trying after that. Stopped hoping, stopped writing, stopped dreaming of one of those hallmark moments where someone knocks on your door and says, "We were wrong. Come home." That fantasy had died the moment I read those 5 words. I focused on Ellie. She was all I had and somehow that was enough. We moved to Oregon when she was 4. I got a job designing small gardens for a local nursery. Nothing glamorous but peaceful. I liked the way things grew when you gave them light and patience. I rented a little house outside Eugene with a yellow porch swing and a cracked sidewalk where Ellie drew chalk animals every summer. It was quiet. It was safe. It was the opposite of everything I'd known before. As she got older, Ellie would ask questions, casual at first, then harder to dodge. "Mom, why don't I have any grandparents?" I'd shrug. "You do. They just live far away." Far like how far? Far enough. Eventually she stopped asking. But I knew the ache lingered in her, the same way it had always lingered in me. She had school assignments where she had to draw a family tree, and hers was always half bare. Once, when she was 8, I caught her tearing out pages from a magazine, pasting together photos of smiling couples. I asked what she was doing. "Making my own grandparents," she said. I laughed like it was cute, but it gutted me. I thought I had done the right thing by shielding her from that side of the family. From Donna's sermons disguised as conversations. From George's stone silence. From Abigail's backhanded pity. I told myself the best gift I could give Ellie was freedom from their legacy. But you can only keep a ghost locked away for so long before it starts haunting you again. That email from Melissa, the one with the video, wasn't the first time my past came knocking. It was just the loudest. And this time I couldn't ignore it. Because the thing about being declared dead is this. Once they bury you, you have 2 choices. Stay in the grave. Or come back and remind them why you were never meant to be buried in the first place. At first it was just curiosity. A half-sick urge to know how far the lie had gone. After all, if you're going to declare your daughter dead, at some point you must have told someone why. The funeral, the eulogy, the fake grieving. None of that happens in a vacuum. So I started digging. It didn't take long. The church's Facebook page had a public album titled, "Celebrating Rebecca's Life, Grace Baptist Women's Fundraiser, 2018. There were 42 photos. Smiling women in pastel cardigans. Tables draped in white cloth and mason jars filled with pink carnations. A giant canvas banner hung across the sanctuary wall. From darkness to light, Rebecca's legacy lives on. My stomach turned before I even clicked the first image. There I was. Or at least the 17-year-old version of me. My choir photo blown up to poster size, mounted on an easel like a centerpiece. In another frame, a quote I didn't recognize: "Even the lost can lead others home." Rebecca Hartman. I never said that. I'd never say that. The next post was a video clip. Donna stood on stage holding a microphone like she'd done it 1,000 times, and she had. Only now her grief was part of the act. "My daughter Rebecca made many mistakes," she said with the voice of a martyr. "She walked away from the Lord, from this church and from our home. But her story, her pain, has become a testimony. God has turned ashes into beauty. And through this fundraiser, we can help prevent other young women from making the same tragic choices." Applause. Applause. Like she just delivered a TED Talk about sanctified suffering. I felt bile rise in my throat. There was no mention of me being alive. Of course not. No acknowledgement that while they clapped and passed donation envelopes, I was working 12-hour days designing backyards for tech millionaires and trying to save enough to send my daughter to college. I scrolled further. They'd created an entire nonprofit in my name, Rebecca's Path Home. It was supposedly a recovery program for at-risk young women. The mission statement read like something plucked from a morality play. Inspired by Rebecca's tragic story, we equip girls with tools to escape sin and find redemption. They raised over $70,000 that year. $70,000. In my name. For a lie. I called Melissa. I didn't even think, I just hit dial. She answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. "Becca? Oh my God, I wasn't sure if... Are you okay? Did you go to it?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. "The fundraiser." There was a pause. "Yeah. I did. I thought, everyone thought, that I was dead?" Melissa exhaled sharply. "Look, I didn't question it. Your mom spoke like she was grieving for real. People were crying. It felt genuine. So genuine they opened their wallets?" "That's not fair," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "People were trying to do good. If your story helped someone, then maybe it wasn't all bad." I didn't even know how to respond to that. I just stared at the wall, heart pounding. Melissa took the silence as permission to continue. "She said you died alone," she whispered. "That someone found you in a shelter. That there was a note, something about forgiveness." I choked on a breath. "There was no note." "I know that now," she said quickly. "God, I feel so stupid." "You should," I almost said. "God," I hung up. For the rest of the night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, printing every page I could find. Financial disclosures. Donor lists. Event flyers. Screenshots of Donna posing with oversized checks. One photo showed her and my father holding hands in front of a giant cross, smiling like they'd been chosen for sainthood. Below the photo, "We lost a daughter, but God gave us purpose." I could have screamed. Instead, I walked into Ellie's room and stood there in the doorway watching her sleep. 17 years old now, just like I had been when everything went to hell. She had her father's laugh, my sarcasm, and a stubborn streak that could rival an earthquake. I thought about what would happen if I tried to do what my parents did. Erase her, then rewrite her life into a parable for strangers to donate to. The thought made me nauseous. She stirred under the covers and blinked up at me. "Mom," she mumbled. "Yeah, baby. Just checking on you. You okay?" I hesitated. Then I nodded. "Yeah. I'm okay." I wasn't. But I would be. Because now I knew the truth wasn't just buried. It had been sold, marketed, packaged and passed around like a cautionary tale in a Sunday bulletin. And if they thought I was going to stay silent forever, they should have picked a different name for their program. Because the real Rebecca Hartman was still alive. And she had a story of her own to tell. Some people say grief makes you do strange things. My parents never grieved me. They replaced me. It started with a gut feeling. The kind of itch you get when something doesn't sit right in your chest but you can't quite name it. After discovering the fundraiser and that damn quote they'd fabricated for me, I couldn't stop myself from digging deeper. The more I found, the worse it got. Somewhere along the way, I told myself I was just gathering evidence, preparing, documenting, building my case. But in truth, I think part of me was still looking for proof that they hadn't really meant to bury me. That maybe they were broken in their own twisted way. That maybe deep down they still missed me. What I found instead was a record from the Shelby County Foster Placement Office. I wasn't even trying to find it. It showed up in a local newsletter. A piece about family sponsorship and youth outreach. A brief mention, George and Donna Hartman, known for their tireless community service and their late daughter's legacy, have opened their home to a young girl in need. The name hit me like a slap. Rebecca Grace Hartman. Age 14. No. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. I zoomed in, reread it 10 times and then searched public school enrollment databases. There it was, clear as day. Registered student. 8th grade. Emergency contact. Donna Hartman. They took in another girl. And they gave her my name. I laughed, but it sounded like something between a gasp and a sob. I grabbed my phone and called the county office, pretending to be a curious member of the press. I asked about the Hartman's foster involvement. The woman on the line was polite, maybe a little wary. They've had Rebecca Grace for nearly 4 years now, she said. Sweet girl. Tragic background. They've been wonderful guardians. I asked because I had to. Was that her birth name? Oz. No, she said. It was something else, but Mrs. Hartman said they wanted to give her a new start. A name with meaning. One they could build a new life around. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the dark for a long time, just breathing. They didn't just write me out. They wrote someone else in. They looked at the space I used to fill and decided it couldn't stay empty. So they found a girl, any girl, and filled it with her. Dressed her in my name. Put my ghost back in their family photo like nothing ever happened. This wasn't grief. It was branding. They rebranded their pain. Turned me into a morality franchise. The fallen daughter, now resurrected through charitable works and carefully curated replacements. It was the kind of story that made people open their checkbooks and pat themselves on the back for supporting real families. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m. I opened Facebook again and scrolled through Donna's profile. She wasn't exactly active, but every now and then she'd post little inspirational quotes in florid fonts. Let go and let God. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. One post from a few months back showed a smiling young girl with auburn hair and braces. The caption read, Our sweet Rebecca Grace, all dressed up for her first youth retreat. We are so proud of the young woman she is becoming. Proud. Of her. Of the name. My name. And then something in me cracked. Not anger. Not yet. Just hollow. I went to the closet and pulled out the box I hadn't touched in years. It held the last remaining pieces of my past. A photo of me and Abigail at a lake one summer, arms sunburned, fake smiling for Dad's camera. A Bible Donna gave me when I was 12, inscribed with my name in gold leaf that had long since faded. A ribbon I'd won in a county-wide poetry contest they never came to watch. All of it shoved in a shoebox like it didn't matter. Because to them it didn't. They didn't just erase me. They didn't mourn me. They replaced me. And worst of all, they gave someone else the version of me they always wanted. Polished. Obedient. Erased of memory. Ellie found me the next morning sitting at the kitchen table, red-eyed and trembling. She placed a hand on my shoulder and said nothing. Just stood there with that fierce loyalty only a child can give. You okay? She asked quietly. No, I said. But I will be. And for the first time in 2 decades I meant it. Because now I knew what I was walking into. They thought they could kill me in name and spirit. But what they didn't realize was that I was done playing dead. I was coming home. And this time I wasn't knocking. The Hartman family reunion was held at a country club just outside Shelby. Classy, tasteful, white tablecloths, twinkling string lights, catered food with name cards that read things like charcuterie experience and lemon-infused salmon. I didn't have an invitation. I didn't need one. When someone hosts a gathering for the whole family, it tends to be an open door, as long as they still think you're dead. I arrived just before sunset. The sky was doing that soft pink and gold trick that makes everything look beautiful, even when it isn't. I wore a simple black dress. Not out of mourning. Those days were long past. But because I wanted to keep their illusions intact just long enough to tear them down. My hands didn't shake when I got out of the car. My heart didn't race. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. I walked through the side gate of the club's garden patio and stepped into the crowd like I belonged there. Laughter floated in the air. Champagne flutes clinked. A cousin I hadn't seen since middle school was retelling a story about some football game from the 90s. There were white tents, monogrammed napkins, and a slideshow cycling through childhood photos projected onto a canvas screen. One photo froze me in place. It was me, at 10, sitting on a picnic blanket in that yellow gingham dress Donna used to force on me every Easter. I was smiling, tightly but smiling, and beneath the image, gone too soon, always in our hearts, they had made me the emotional centerpiece of their event. I kept walking. A few heads turned. Polite confusion. Then something else. Recognition. Aunt Ruth was the first to react. She dropped her glass. The sharp shatter cut the air in half and conversation died around it. People turned slowly like they were watching a horror movie in real time. And there I was, the ghost they'd summoned but never expected to see. Abigail froze mid-laugh, hands still resting lightly on her husband's shoulder. Her smile faltered, twitched, then fell completely. Her eyes widened like saucers. The color drained from her face. "Is this?" she started, voice barely a whisper. "No," someone else said. "That can't be." Then Donna appeared from behind the table of hors d'oeuvres. She saw me and for a long, breathless second we just stared at each other. She looked exactly the same. The same neat curls, the same pearl earrings, the same practiced poise of a woman used to being observed, admired, obeyed. But something cracked in her eyes as I stepped forward. "Rebecca?" she said, like she wasn't sure if I was real or something conjured from memory. I smiled. "Hello, Mother." Gasps rippled through the crowd. George, my father, was standing near the podium. His hands gripped the edge of the table like he needed the wood to hold him upright. He didn't say a word. Just looked at me like I was a creature he'd forgotten how to name. I stepped into the center of the patio, heels tapping softly against the tile, and for a moment no one moved. Even the string quartet in the corner trailed off into silence. "I know I wasn't on the guest list," I said, voice calm, measured, but loud enough to reach the edges of the garden. "But I heard this was a family event. And since I'm still technically part of this family, despite the obituary, I thought I'd stop by." No one laughed. Donna took a small step forward. Her voice trembled. You can't just show up like this." "Why not?" I asked. "Dead people don't need invitations." A few people looked away. Others looked at me like I was radioactive. I turned to the slideshow still running behind me. Another photo appeared, this one of Abigail in college, smiling with a diploma in her hand. The caption said, "A legacy of faith and strength." "I saw the fundraiser," I continued. "The posters. The speech you gave about me being found in a shelter. The donation forms. The quote I never said." I paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. "You didn't just erase me. You monetized me." Donna's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then Abigail spoke, voice tight. "This isn't the time or place." "No," I cut her off. "You're right. The time was 23 years ago. When you stood by and said nothing. When I wrote to you, told you I had a daughter and got a letter back that said I was already dead." People turned to look at her. She flushed, then went pale again. "And yet here I am," I said. "Very much alive. Not broken. Not ashamed. And not afraid of you anymore." There was a long, heavy silence. Then someone clapped. One, maybe two people. I didn't turn to see who it was. Because I wasn't here for their approval. I wasn't here to scream or cry or plead. I was here so they'd never forget what it felt like to be haunted by the truth. The folder I carried wasn't thick, but it was heavy in ways no one there could have imagined. I walked to the table by the podium and set it down, flipping it open like I was presenting evidence in a courtroom. Which in many ways I was. "Since I'm already dead," I began, "I figured I'd bring a few documents for the living to review." I pulled out the first sheet and held it up. "This is a certified copy of my birth certificate, signed by George Hartman and Donna Miller Hartman in 1981. That's me, Rebecca Lynn Hartman. Born and, contrary to popular belief, still breathing." Someone in the back coughed nervously. The next paper was from the Oregon State Board of Landscape Architects. "This is my license. Issued in my legal name. Active for 10 years. I design gardens for people who want to make things grow, not for those who specialize in digging metaphorical graves." I laid down photos. Me and Ellie on her first day of school at the coast with wind-blown hair, holding hands in the snow outside our rental house with twinkling lights framing the porch. Then came the big one. I held up a printed page with the Rebecca's Path Home logo, right beside a screenshot of Donna's church fundraiser video. "This," I said, turning to face the crowd, "is a photo of the woman you all watched cry into a microphone while claiming her daughter died in a shelter. And this," I flipped the page, "is a tax document filed under that organization using my name to collect over $70,000 in charitable donations." The audience murmured. A few people actually gasped. I caught George's jaw tightening, his hands clasped like he was praying. Donna had gone bone white, clutching her pearl necklace so hard I thought it might snap. "Let's be clear," I continued. "You didn't mourn me. You commodified me. You turned me into a ghost that paid your bills, polished your reputations, and made your testimonies sound more tragic and triumphant." Abigail stepped forward then, voice sharp and slicing through the tension like a blade. "You left," she snapped. "You walked away from this family, from everything. You made your choice and we made peace with it the best way we could." "No," I said, holding her stare. "I was thrown out like trash with a hefty bag full of hand-me-downs and a Bible verse about sin taped to the flap. I wrote you. I told you about Ellie. And you wrote back, 'My daughter is already dead.' That wasn't peace, Abigail. That was a death sentence. You disgraced us," she hissed. "You got pregnant with a mechanic's baby, flaunted your sin, and you expected us to smile and welcome it like a blessing?" "She's my daughter," I said coldly. "And she is more family to me than any of you have ever been." That hit harder than I expected. Even Abigail flinched. Then came the final blow. I held up a color photo of a girl with auburn hair and braces, smiling shyly beside Donna at a youth retreat. "And this is the child you adopted and renamed Rebecca Hartman. I don't blame her. She's a kid. But you replaced me. You didn't grieve. You recycled. You built a better version of me in your own image. One who keeps her mouth shut, shows up for Sunday service, and doesn't remind you of the truth you buried." Donna finally found her voice. "We gave that girl a home," she said, the tremble in her throat betraying the hard shell she wore. "We gave her a second chance." "No," I replied. "You gave yourselves a second chance. At control. At illusion. At making the world forget what you did to the first one." Someone clapped again. Louder this time. Then someone else. I didn't turn to see who it was. I wasn't doing this for applause. George stepped forward for the first time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. He just looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "You should have stayed gone." And there was the only truth he was ever capable of saying out loud. I took a deep breath. Not because I was winded, but because I knew what I had to say next. "I came here tonight not to ask for forgiveness," I said, turning back to the crowd. "Not to be embraced or welcomed back. I came so every person in this family would remember what you did when someone broke your rules. I came because the next time you say my name, you won't say it with pity or with pride. You'll say it with the memory of how loud the truth can be when it's no longer afraid." And with that, I picked up the folder, closed it gently, and walked away from the podium. Ellie was waiting at the edge of the garden just like I asked. She wore the same steady look I'd seen 1,000 times before, equal parts worry and fire. She took my hand without a word. We walked out of the reunion together. And no one stopped us. Not this time. We didn't speak during the car ride home. Ellie kept her eyes on the road while I stared out the window, watching Shelby disappear behind us. Church steeples, gas stations, familiar gravel roads swallowed by darkness. The town hadn't changed. Same faces, same rituals, same Sunday smiles stretched over secrets. What changed was me. When we reached the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally exhaled. Not from relief, but release. Like something had finally unhooked itself from my ribs and floated away. I didn't cry. Thought I might. But there was nothing left to mourn. Ellie handed me a glass of water and sat beside me. "So," she said quietly, "how do you feel?" I took a long sip. Like I just dug myself out of my own grave. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. She just leaned her head on my shoulder. And for the first time in my life, I felt what family was supposed to feel like. Not performance. Not expectation. Just presence. We left Shelby the next morning before sunrise. No fanfare. No confrontation. No one followed. No one called. I didn't need them to. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. Back in Oregon, things didn't go back to normal. They got better. A month later, I recorded my story on a podcast hosted by a therapist who specialized in religious trauma. I didn't hold back. I named names. I read excerpts from the letter. I played audio clips from the fundraiser. I told the world what it felt like to be erased, replaced, resurrected, and still be told it was your fault. The episode went viral. Thousands of comments flooded in. This happened to me too. They called me the black sheep, and now I know it was projection. I cried through the whole thing. Thank you for giving words to my silence. And then one day there was a message request from someone with the last name Hartman. Not Abigail. Not Donna. Not George. The profile photo showed a girl. Red hair, braces, familiar eyes. The new Rebecca. The one they renamed in my image. She wrote, "Hi. I'm sorry to bother you. I found the podcast. I didn't know any of it. I thought they named me after someone they lost. Not someone they threw away. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry they did that to you. I'm sorry I was part of it even if I didn't know. And thank you for telling the truth." I stared at her message for a long time. Then I replied, "You're not part of what they did. You're part of what they tried to cover up. Live your life. Be your own name. Don't carry their lies for them." He hearted the message. We haven't spoken since. Sometimes closure isn't a door swinging shut. Sometimes it's just the silence that comes when you stop knocking. Ellie graduates high school in a few months. She's applying to colleges out of state. Says she wants to study psychology. Maybe help kids like you, she teases. I laugh, but I know she means it. She knows what survival looks like. She grew up watching me build peace out of rubble. And she carries that strength in her whether she knows it or not. One evening, she found me standing in the garden behind our house, watching the rosemary bloom. "Do you regret going back?" she asked. I thought about it. The humiliation. The rage. The girl they replaced me with. The folder full of evidence and pain. Then I thought about standing in that garden alive. Holding her hand. Hearing the applause not for theatrics but for truth. "No," I said. "I don't regret going back." She nodded. "You didn't go for them." "I went for me," I said. "And for you." And that was the truth. Because at some point you stop waiting for people to see you. To accept you. To apologize. You learn to stand where they buried you and grow anyway. You learn to look them in the eyes and say, "You don't get to decide I'm unworthy just because I didn't bend. You don't get to profit off my disappearance. You don't get to call it grief when you never wanted me to live." I don't know if they'll ever reach out. I don't care. What I do know is this. I don't need their forgiveness. I don't need their permission to exist. And I will never, ever apologize for surviving.